how did you make your way to this type of work, this way of contributing in the world?
Phil Phails for you.
I think my relationship with my spouse is great. And I think that I've appreciated that, plus all the other relationships in my life. And so I think that's why I was drawn more to couples counseling and also group work. Also, hyperactive ADHD, like you like more things in the room, the more action, the more things, the more puzzle pieces, all those things to navigate, which can be overwhelming for a lot of therapists. So I was really drawn to that. And then because I had ADHD myself, I would say I grew up, I think, for the ADHD part in really great environments that not everyone gets. So
you mentioned your spouse. Did you get into this after you were married?
No, I mean, I was.
Did you study psychology when you were?
Yeah, I mean, I was with him, and we didn't get married until we had a kid. We did like a commitment ceremony because like same-sex marriage wasn't legal when we did that.
Was there a time in your life when you're like, this is my purpose, this is my mission to kind of support folks with ADHD?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I think everybody's different. When I was really into the couples counseling world, and I was like, reading all the books and trying to take all the courses from like Tatkin, Esther Perel, Sue Johnson, I was ADHD fashion. I wanted to go everywhere. Terry Real.
Yeah.
So I was like going to all their
Terry Real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Terry Real.
Yeah. He's good for it. And they all bring something that's really important. And I think it's great because I know how to refer out too, where I'm like, this would be the therapy the model that would probably work better for you.
So you were really into couples therapy.
I was really into couples therapy. And then, for ADHD, when I became a mom, which now I understand why, that's where I was like, whoa, like I had a very ADHD great life. I didn't realize it at the time because even then, we didn't know that much. Like I think when I got my diagnosis, it was like, oh, you can try medicine or this, but there was no real explanation. There was not a lot of like executive functioning supports, none of those things. So anyways, like when I was struggling as a mom, which I now know a lot more reasons why that is, I was more going into like, okay, well, I need some extra help. Like this is what the heck, And so I went to some other trainings for ADHD at the same time that I was doing all these other things. I tried medicine for the first time, which I was like, oh, I could see how this would have been helpful.
Was this before you were a social worker, a licensed clinical?
No, I was a social worker
at this time.
At this time, yeah.
Quick question: when I hear a lot of like resonance in what you're sharing, and I'm wondering if your motivations were similar to mine. I found myself going deep into a lot of relational practices, some on a different track, like Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, the John Gottman stuff on the science of trust and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Other folks, whether it's Dan Siegel, interpersonal neurobiology, that type of stuff. And when I look back on it, I was trying to fix myself in order to make a relationship work. Did you ever find that? Like, I feel I had this thought that like, oh, if I just learned the right tools, if I just found the right framework of the right workshop, something would click in my brain and this relationship would start working better.
Aww. I would say
you just awed me.
I know.
Oh my God. It's so motherly.
No, it's when you
be hard.
I just, my heart like just, breaks a little sometimes when it,
you never did that. I got a sense you never did that.
I don't think that was it for me. And I know when we go into that, I can explain more why. But I mean, it is that thing that there's something, this message that you got, that there's something fundamentally wrong with you. And if you can fix it, then everything will be okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that really goes back to a lot of like kind of childhood trauma where you get stuck in that kind of like, okay, if this fixes this, then this will go there.
Oh yeah. My life, I've been trying to figure out for a long, long time, what practice, what workshop, what idea, whether it was neuro-linguistic programming, DBT, CBT, like I've gone through If you looked at my worksheet on these, it's extensive.
You've done a lot. Okay.
A ton.
Okay. Well, then if you take my stuff, I'd be super curious on how, because it's very different, because it's very ADHD focused.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like, you know, all the learning, which I have to talk to a lot. I do a lot of like science and research of movement and being goofy and silly.
You didn't
for
get any part
the
of that.
non-ADHD. Well, I think this is the thing. Like, you know, I was maybe curious for other people in my life of why their relationships weren't working. I think I had some really great models, and I also had some very key people that were that's a protective factor, you know, that like I was, you know, I never was made to feel like less than or and this is the other thing. Like I think I have very rarely gone into neurotypical environments and worlds. Like that's just not been my reality almost ever. So I have a very different experience where sometimes when I hear other things, I'm like, oh, like, or I go in these environments, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this, it's the opposite, right? I'm like, whoa, what's this world? This isn't fun. Why would I be here? You know? So I think in that way, I was lucky enough, and I think it's really important to share that too, because I do think, you know, as people worry about their kids and all these other things, there's so many different ways that you can do all these protective factors so that these messages don't impact them. And that way you're really working with their brains and bodies and celebrating it. And that's the whole point of what I do is like celebrating who you are, not you need to be fixed and you're the problem. That's like the crap that we're given, and it's not true.
Oh, I was
right?
the identified patient in the family. For sure.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I didn't realize it until you said that like earlier. I was like, oh yeah, that probably maps to being a de-identified patient.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then your family is like, okay, you're the one who's making out this
thing. And then the family's going to work out. And then no wonder I would think I need to fix myself. And then this relationship would work out. It's just what I was implanted from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Rats. Question 4. Man.
I like the fact that you want to connect. We're like, we have the same experience. But I do think that's the thing is that when you're talking about these things, what I have seen that's better than individual therapy, right? Because in individual therapy, it's like you can get to this point. It's like, okay, now you have to do it with other people. It's like, okay, if they're too scared to do that, then it's like, okay, let's move to group therapy or these types of things. Yeah. But I think that, you know, you only do so much in like an hour a week. And so if you're working with the people that you're living with and you're having an ADHD affirming environment at your home and in your relationships, it's like, it fills you and it's so life-changing. And so I like that. I like the fact of having more or, you know, of being able to support in a relational way. Because I'm very systems oriented. I'm very environmental oriented, not like, you know, you're the problem, so you got to fix yourself.
Yeah, family
just do these things.
There's where acceptance.
And so I think working in that model is really important. And in the U.S. medical model, it's it's not as prevalent as like other countries that do like a lot more services for families and including them. And it makes a huge difference. And so I think that's why like I liked the couples work, I think because there was more of a dynamic there. And I also liked when you know, it doesn't mean that everybody gets this when they go to couples counseling or relationship counseling. It varies, especially on what you're bringing and where you're at and all these things. But like when you're getting these parts of you that are healed and seen, and that's my favorite thing where it's just like, they still want to keep coming. And I'm like, whoa, look at you. Like, I'm just like, wow, look at this. This is great. This is that. I mean, like, I love that. I love seeing things like click and change and people just staying so connected in conflict. And I think that's so healing. Relationships are the key to so much, to everything.
We're intrinsically social beings.
I know, even though we're supposed to be do it all yourself here. Like, you know,
I think that's there's this American kind of cultural thing of independence, radical independence.
I know. Like, we're so not relationally focused.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah. It's just, we have a lot of heartful messages around relationships too, you know, like, and all the things of how we idealize them. And, you know, there's love conquers all and all the myths that go in there. But no, I think that there's lots of different reasons, but I think that was the main one. And then because of my own journey, I started like, okay, learning a little bit more about ADHD, more stuff that I didn't really know. And then I was like, I need to start assessing for this in couples, right? And so I started assessing or adapting and tweaking it because I searched. I'm like, okay, what is the couples counseling method for ADHD? And I couldn't find anything.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is like over a decade ago. And so so anyways, like I started tweaking things, and then I think more people, start getting referred to me. And that's sort of how I just kind of came into this niche, because I was like bringing it into the practice before it was there. And I also really love preventative work, right? Like, so I do premarital counseling because also I couldn't find a good one for us, like a non-religious one for me and my partner at the time. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. And so same, I would see these people and I'm like, you don't need communication skills. You need like ADHD relationship skills. And that's where like I started the ADHD Relationship Bootcamp and all those other things that like really are more about changing your environment, staying in connection, getting these things versus like talking about problems when it's a lot more about how do you embrace these 5 pillars that I talk about.
Yeah.
And so I think the combination of that was like, kind of was the driving force of like the ADHD. Because I was like, this is so sad. It doesn't need to be this hard. And like, wanting to do all those things.
To bring in cognitive orientation into the discussion when couples or folks that are relating are asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
Having an awareness of, is one of them neurodivergent, or does one have ADHD, or does one of them have, that plays a huge role in who's trying to relate and what are their struggles, or what has their experience been like leading up to that point. And
I think adult ADHD is, it's not even really studied in most graduate programs like for kids. And I did used to work with kids, so I did get a lot more training in it. It is so dismissed, right? It's like normally it's like, it's anxiety or depression, which it could be. There's a lot of like what we call morbidities, but like co-occurring illnesses.
Existing conditions, yeah.